Go Blue to Jalen Rose. How are you, Jalen?
Thanks for having me on, Rich. Appreciate the love.
Come on, you know that. So let's start with last night before we get to Juwan and him being introduced as the new HC at the University of Michigan. Jalen Rose here in the Honda Insider Report. Was last night at all surprising to you, Jalen?
It was not surprising to me, and I'm not foolish enough to not give respect to the dynastic situation that the Golden State Warriors have built. I've been in the gym and watched them win 3 of the last 4 championships. Understand if they're healthy, they're the favorites to win 4 out of 5. But when you look at the dynamics of their team, it has changed from when they first won championships before KD arrived, and their motto, and rightfully so, was strength in numbers, to now they're a depleted team. And currently they're either playing with or without 3 of their top 6 players in KD, Andre Iguodala, who was hobbled at the end of yesterday's game, and DeMarcus Cousins, who's now returning from injury. That's 3 of their top 6 players. So I felt coming into this series that they should struggle going against the front line of the Toronto Raptors because they're productive, they're physical, they're veterans. Kawhi Leonard, Pascal Siakam, Marc Gasol, and that played out in Game 1. And that's why I picked the Toronto Raptors on paper to win this series before it started.
Yeah, I saw that in the pregame last night. You got so upset that Paul Pierce chose the Raptors right before you, too, Jalen. Your reaction was priceless.
I did. And he's a jinx. I was about to change everything that I studied for on that moment, but I just couldn't.
No, you got to stick with the plan, and that's your thought. I mean, don't make anybody else influence you in that. But that was a funny reaction that you had on all of that. So what was it like in the building last night, Jalen?
So the building was electric, and I want to paint everybody a picture for somebody that's in Toronto right now and was fortunate enough to play 3 seasons here. Toronto is one of the top 3 NBA cities, bar none. Ask any player, ask any coach. When you're in California, they have 4 professional teams. In Los Angeles, they have 2. So your interest is going to be split. It's just human nature. And usually people gravitate to the teams that have the most championships. That's kind of how it works. In Toronto, they're the only squad representing a country. They have a nation behind them. So, Rich, there's 20,000 people in the arena, but it's 30,000 people in Jurassic Park outside of the arena. The only time you get those scenes in the United States are for parades. And so to have that level of support that they have and have the team make it to the playoffs for 6 straight years and Masai Ujiri pull off great chess moves in deciding that the team had maximized under Coach of the Year Dwayne Casey and the perennial All-Star DeMar DeRozan, that he was going to turn the reins over to a first-year NBA coach in Nick Nurse and acquire Kawhi Leonard in the final year of his contract and get this team to its first NBA Finals in 25 seasons. So they have a lot of momentum on their side along with home court advantage.
And it came through the TV, Jalen. It just jumped through the TV, and it grabbed me by the lapels, and it was great to see. But obviously, that's just one game. What is Steve Kerr thinking about right now, other than what he can't control, Durant's calf muscle? What does Kerr take out of last night to try and tinker to draw blood and go home and try and take a commanding lead in this finals?
So we get so enamored with the Golden State Warriors offense, and rightfully so. But this isn't the team that used to surround the three-point line with 4 or 5 players that can shoot 38% from 3. And then you have the Splash Brothers, who clearly both can go off for a major game at any time. They got to get back to defending. They're not getting stops. Draymond Green just came out recently and talked about how he felt like he was the greatest defender in the history of the NBA. And as somebody that watched him play in high school, watched him play 4 years in the Big Ten in college, reinvent his body, reinvent his game, and become the player that we saw against Portland that was really dominant. Pascal Siakam had his way against Draymond. In the half court, in transition, he was making threes. He was dropping dimes. He was getting layups. He was getting dunks. They have to find a way to get back to defending. The Raptors shot 50% from the floor. So the Golden State Warriors, that's going to be the challenge for Draymond, for Klay. Can they lead the Warriors on that side of the floor and then allow that to convert to high percentage offense?
Now, I saw last night, Jalen, as well, that Chauncey Billups made his prediction conditional on the health of Durant. Do you believe Durant must come back and play for the Warriors to win this series?
No KD, no ring. That's basically how I feel about this year. And I was going to joke with Chauncey tomorrow, but I'm glad you brought it up, Rich, and thank you for paying attention to details. For hedging his bet, number one. But number two, I looked on his social media page. I kid you not. It says Golden State Warriors in 7 on his IG page. So I don't know who he thinks is going to win the series, but I'll tell you this. If KD doesn't come back until approximately the 5th game, but if it's 3-1 at that time, Toronto Raptors, I believe clearly they go on to win. Now, if it's 2-2, it becomes an interesting quandary for KD and the team because that's going to be a lot of pressure on him. The team is going to have to adjust to having him back in the lineup. And even though he's a great player, they're still playing a lot different with him out. There's a lot more moving. There's a lot more cutting. There's a lot more dribble handoffs. Now when you have KD, it's more at the elbow, more at the mid-post, more trying to get drives to the basket. And so trying to integrate him in Game 4 or Game 5 of a NBA Finals when you're either tied or trailing, he's in the final year of his deal. We don't know if he's going to be 100%, and he hasn't practiced with the team yet. So those dynamics don't work in the Golden State Warriors' favor at this point of the series.
They certainly do not. Jalen Rose in the Honda Insider Report. I haven't spoken to you in a bit, so I know this has been a topic of discussion for weeks. So I'll ask you anyway here. Do you think Durant knows what his status is come July 1st, that he really, he's selling property in the Bay Area, buying a spot in New York, meaning he's going to the Knicks or maybe even, obviously, Brooklyn? Do you think he knows right now what's going to happen July 1st?
I think he's 75% has a gut feeling of what he wants to do. But this is going to be one of the most fascinating NBA off seasons with trades, depending on what happened with Anthony Davis and or Chris Paul. In free agency, Kawhi Leonard, Klay Thompson, Kevin Durant, Kemba Walker, Boogie Cousins, Jimmy Butler, Tobias Harris. There's so many players that are going to be on the free agent market, Kyrie Irving, that it's going to be an opportunity to reshuffle the deck. You have the Lakers who have an opportunity to add a max player to go with LeBron. You have the Clippers to have an opportunity to add 2 max players. The Knicks and the Nets both can add 2 players. So I think it's largely going to depend on not only a great player like KD choosing a destination, but obviously figuring if somebody's going to go play in that destination with him. So I can't wait to see how it plays out. And this is one of the more odd NBA finals where you look out on the floor and you see a Kawhi Leonard and potentially Kevin Durant if he returns, and you can say, wow, the 2 best players on both NBA Finals teams have not committed to playing with those teams past this season. That has never happened as long as I've been paying attention to the game. So I can't wait to see what those guys are going to ultimately decide.
All right, Jalen, let's turn to Coach Juwan Howard of the University of Michigan basketball program, head coach of that program. If I had told you back in the day that this would happen, you would have said what?
I would have said Big Newt, head coach, University of Michigan, not going to be able to do it. And what I want people to understand, and Rich, my U of M brother, you see and understand the growth that every person has from college to being in their 40s. Mm-hmm. We got a chance to play ours out on a national stage. I would not have seen myself being the founder of a tuition-free charter high school when I was in college. The skinny, bumpy-faced kid that had a chip on his shoulder. The same thing about Juwan, a guy from Chicago that decided he was going to go to the University of Michigan. And the day he committed is the day that his grandmother passed away, and she meant everything to him. And then along with the coaching staff, Steve Fisher and Brian Dutcher, became a league catalyst to recruit the other 4 members to come play at the University of Michigan. And the difference between he and I, even back then, he was always the adult in the room. He was always the voice of reason. He was always mature. You never seen him without a crease in his pants. You never seen him without a haircut. You never saw him have foot in the mouth type of moments that all college kids have. But for some reason, he had a level of maturity that he was able to avoid those pitfalls. And then you go on to the league and play 19 years, get paid a maximum contract, be an all-star, win a championship late in your career with LeBron James and Dwayne Wade, join the coaching staff of Eric Spoelstra, one of the tops in the game, get a chance to be under the stewardship of Pat Riley, one of the great matriarchs in NBA history. He paid his dues. 6 years as a coach, sitting on the bench, sitting behind the bench, coaching summer league, getting NBA interviews with the Lakers and the Cavs and a couple other teams, the Knicks. And so the timing worked out perfect that John Beilein left when he did, because now you look and say, who's the best candidate for this job right now? And it's Juwan Howard. He just so happens to be an alum. He just so happens to be a member of the Fab Five. So I'm really happy for him to be the leader of the program. And obviously we're going to be there and do all we can to help support him, do what he can to try to achieve his goals.
Now, I know you've said this on ESPN, and I know I had C-Webb on last week too, and he said we're all going to be there. Are you all going to be there? Is the band getting back together, Jalen, under one roof for one goal and getting back together?
Excuse my singing, but I don't care. I just love to have fun and be happy. The boys are back in town. Yes. And here's the thing. There was a fracture in the relationship between the University of Michigan and the Fab Five. It happens in families. It happens with your friends. And it always varies on how you're feeling about the situation. So for me as a Detroit native, while I was not being acknowledged as a former basketball player, I still was a donor. I still have a scholarship endowment that's graduated a couple of kids. I've actually had a couple of my kids from the Jalen Rose Leadership Academy not only attend Michigan, but I had one graduate already, and another one's going to graduate later in the year. So I've never stopped loving the university, but when there was a separation and Chris had to do his 10 years, I was like, I'm going to ride with my brother. So from 1994 to 2011, I didn't go back to campus either. And I didn't talk about the relationship that we have with one another. I didn't talk about my relationship with the school unless I was asked. And you started this interview by saying, I'm on as many shows as probably anybody in the industry. So when I get asked about real-time situations, whether it's the NBA Finals or whether it's what's happening with Michigan, I'm going to give a respectable answer. And so now all of a sudden the separation has ended. So how can Michigan now say we're going to also bury the hatchet? They did it and dropped the mic by hiring Juwan Howard. That lets you know that the relationship went from being one that we seem to almost tolerate each other to now we're family again. So, yes, I do anticipate that happening, and we're going to be there to support Juwan, to support the program. And you know this, Rich, we want to win. Like, Michigan has a unique fan base and respect on campus that, unlike other schools, some of them are considered only football schools. Some of them considered basketball schools. We're expected to be in the top 10 in both at all times. And to be the only school in college right now, Division I, to have a former football player, Jim Harbaugh, and a former basketball player, Juwan Howard, leading those programs It just feels different. Let me give you an example. Coach Cal is one of the best coaches in collegiate basketball. Has done a terrific job wherever he's been. UMass, Memphis, and now Kentucky, where he's been the matriarch of the one and done. He owned it even when Coach K was denying it. He did a great job in Memphis, but it's just different when you hire Penny Hardaway because you saw him in uniform for that team. You cheer for him. You understand that he's going to have a level of commitment, and that's the commitment that we now have because we now feel that the hatchet is buried when they hired our brother Juwan. And it's not just the Fab Five. You know this, Rich. I idolized Glenn Rice, Lloyd Vaught, Terry Mills, Ramil Robinson, Sean Higgins. Antoine Jobert went to my high school. Leslie Rockamore before me. The General Gary Grant. Roy Tarpley's from Detroit. My high school coach, Perry Watson, coached at Michigan while I was there and coached Juwan. And so there's so many tentacles that were splintered at the University of Michigan as it related to our relationship with them. But again, when Juwan Howard gets hired, all of that gets buried. Now we're all for one for all, and supporting the program and trying to continue to elevate what John Beilein established.
And you and C-Webb, do you guys need to hash anything out yourselves, Jalen?
Of course. Of course, there's some things that we're going to hash out as brothers, as men, that will do off wax, I'm pretty sure, at some time between now and the union that you're talking about. But for those that don't know, we go back before Michigan. Like, we played on the Super Friends with Curtis Hervey when we were 13 years old, going to St. Louis, going to Washington, D.C. We decided that we were going to go to Michigan together. He didn't wear number 4 in high school. I didn't wear number 5 in high school. We chose those numbers because we were the last two to sign our letter of intent. So our relationship go way deeper than Ann Arbor. It starts in Detroit. And now that we're responsible adults, it's up for us to be leaders and men to show people that we can have conflict resolution without drama or without any disrespect. And I think the hiring of Juwan now also gives us a baton to now give us a sense of urgency to make it happen. And I believe and I'm sure that it will take place.
Yeah, I got Juwan coming up in the next hour, and I'm genuinely excited about all this, Jalen. And just to bring this all full circle and put a button on it, when you pointed out about how going from college as a teenager in your 20s and then becoming a 40-year-old and you're a professional and then you're a father or a mother or whatever as you go throughout your life, what the Fab Five has done. I mean, I just mentioned everything that you've done, that you've become at ESPN, C-Webb doing what he's doing on Turner. Juwan is now the head coach of Michigan basketball. I'm not completely familiar with what Jimmy King and Ray Jackson are up to. We see Pelinka, interestingly enough, in the news here in Los Angeles as the GM. It is amazing what has happened with that team here now in 2019, Jalen.
Our fingerprints are everywhere. And I literally, in Toronto, just got finished doing a hit with First Take. Walked right out of the building. It was 4 people standing in front of me. One had a son named Jalen. One had a daughter named Jalen. One of them was named Jalen that I was taking pictures with and signing autographs with.
Man.
So it's bigger than just basketball. And now that we've gotten a chance to graduate in life, it's the score of the game and it's the game of life. And your naysayers are going to always judge you by your worst moments or always going to throw in your face what you can't do or what you didn't accomplish. So I want our story to be one of maturity because what people saw from us as collegiate students and now hopefully what they're seeing from us as taxpaying citizens and people that are giving back to our community and trying to have a positive influence and successful individuals that they now can draw strength and understand that they can grow and be better as they continue to get older and mature.
Jalen, you're the man. Best to everybody. Best to Molly. Best to everybody, okay? And we'll chat soon.
That's mutual. I appreciate the love. Don't hesitate to reach out. I'm one call away.
Right back at you. That's Jalen Rose, at Jalen Rose on Twitter, at Jalen versus everybody on Instagram, right here on The Rich Eisen Show.
For more of The Rich Eisen Show, tune to Audience Channel 239 on DirecTV for free on BR Live or download The Rich Eisen Show app.